we're really excited to have everybody here tonight. It looks like we have a really nice crowd, a nice full crowd. So we will get started here in just about 30 seconds to give everybody a chance to get in here. We have many on the registration that I want to make sure get an opportunity. But this recording will be available on our YouTube channel and also on our website. So you can always go back and look at it. Tonight, the information, there's a lot of slides, and I will try to shorten some of those up and try to add a few tidbits here and there as we go through, because this is a big topic, and it's a topic that a lot of times we don't address head on. So let's talk about some of the issues. Specifically, what we know is that hormone balances can start as early as even in our teens or 20s, and certainly continue to change as we age. So it's not necessarily just an aging issue, but it can be a situation where things can kind of snowball and get out of hand just a little bit here. So when we take a look at, let me go back here, sorry. So premenopause can start as early as in your 30s. And a lot of times prescriptions are written for birth control pills. But what we know about those is that they are synthetic and they are not metabolized as well to equal regular hormone levels. And so they can not necessarily curb all of our issues. And some women actually have ongoing issues later in life once they stop their birth control pills. But the bottom line is that hormones really aren't complicated. They are not necessarily rocket science. It's just purely human physiology. And there are wonderful ways that we can test so that you don't have to put up with issues such as hot sweats and night sweats, hot flashes, foggy thinking, loss of mobility, even aging situations such as dementia and Alzheimer's, which are not natural, which are not normal, and even having to deal with osteopenia and osteoporosis. We really don't want other issues to become a problem as well, such as vaginal health, because sometimes that can lead to some pretty serious things. So when we take a look at signs and symptoms of menopause, and the reason why I put this up here is because menopause is not necessarily just an issue that happens once you get to be 45 or 50. This stuff can actually happen much earlier. And a lot of times we don't necessarily situate the issues with an hormone imbalance, but that is truly what's going on. Symptoms can happen at any age. And there's a wide variety of kind of background story to that, but they don't have to be, these changes don't have to be debilitating. And they certainly do not necessarily have to take years and years and years to treat. So this is a gal that I really have a lot of admiration for. I have a lot of respect for her. She is a physician who is still practicing. She was in the ER for over 30 years and then went into women's health, and then realized that there's so much more to women's health than just estrogen, that she decided to start writing other books. And right now she has, I want to say probably a dozen books or more to her credit. And a lot of the information that I'm going to present tonight has a direct correlation to a lot of the slides and presentations that she has presented as well. And she has been so gracious to share her information with all of us. So it's important to take a look at hormone replacement therapy, not just because we want to relieve our symptoms, but we want to prevent ongoing issues such as memory loss, such as loss of eyesight, even movement. I think those are the three primary issues that women really want to hang on to. Is they want to maintain their memory. They want to be able to move, because, I mean, my gosh, we've all got a bucket list of things that we want to accomplish, but we want to make sure that we're also really healthy, so that when we do get an opportunity to maybe not work 40, 50 hours a week, we can spend some time with our loved ones and do the things that we've always wanted to do that are on our bucket list. Because I think what we have seen, especially over the last couple of years, is that maybe we shouldn't be putting these off too much. What we know specifically is that hormones are more than just estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. We really need to take a look at other hormones such as insulin, such as thyroid, growth hormone, estrogen, and DHEA. And so when I look at the hormones, I try to think of the 5 Olympic rings. So the Olympics are on right now, they're wrapping up. But when you look at the Olympic rings, there are 5 rings, right? And so there's 3 on top and there's 2 on the bottom. And they only touch each other through very small areas of communication. But truly, they do communicate all amongst themselves, even though they're 5 different colors and they're not directly touching. And that's very much what happens with the hormones as well. When we're looking at menopause or perimenopausal issues, it's more than just hot flashes and night sweats. We can also take a look at low back pain and bloating, as well as panic attacks, funny dreams, hair growth in places that we're not really wanting hair to grow, like on our face, nipple area, and a lack of sexual interest. It's not uncommon that people call literally every day and want to know what they can do for their libido, or even like loss of scalp hair. And some of that has to do with stress. Some of it has to do with not just changes in our stress hormones. Sometimes it has to do with our diet. Sometimes it has to do with what's actually growing in our gut. So we have ways to get to the bottom of these issues. So when we go back, there's even more, right? So when we're dealing with issues, maybe you have to cross your legs when you sneeze or cough, that we can correct with some really great creams that can be applied to the vaginal area. Snoring. Snoring is a huge issue that is associated with changes in hormone levels. So is flatulence, a wide variety of indigestion issues, and aches and pains, not just in the low back, but when we take a look at knees, wrists, shoulders, and heels. Sore breasts are very closely related to hormonal changes. But estrogen isn't necessarily always the bad guy or bad girl. So estrogen has over 400 functions in the body, and these are just a few. We do know that estrogen can actually help prevent Alzheimer's disease. It can change and improve metabolic rate, again, if it's kept within the normal ratio. It helps to maintain muscle mass. It improves sleep. It improves our sensitivity to insulin. It can help reduce the issues of cataracts, and it enhances a wide variety of other vitamins and minerals that are used and taken up in the body, and also synergistically works with collagen in the skin to maintain really good tightness in the skin. And that's not just skin on the outside of our body, but skin on the inside, including blood vessels. We know that it helps with fine motor skills. And it also helps us to really navigate kind of an even keel with our emotions. And it very much interacts with cholesterol. Did you know that all hormones actually start as cholesterol, and then as they're metabolized, they move into pregnenolone, progesterone, DHEA, testosterone, and estrogens? So if our estrogen isn't within balance, we can see an improvement in energy, improvement in mood, ability to concentrate, good bone density. It may even help prevent glaucoma, but it reduces our overall risk of heart disease by 40 to 50%. That's huge. That is better than what most medications do as well. And estrogen is a natural part of our body, not just our female body, but our male body as well. Now, when we have too much estrogen, these are some of the typical symptoms. So estrogen can affect thyroid. It can actually lower thyroid function. And with that, we can see weight gain and sluggishness, changes in mood, changes in ability to think. Our skin might change, our hair can change, bloating, a wide variety of other issues, including depression and anxiety. Estrogen, too much estrogen can cause night sweats. So it's really about being in balance. If we take in too much estrogen or we make too much estrogen, we can see that estrogen can have significant issues on our body. Now, we may have too much estrogen in our body because we don't move enough, or we don't have enough fiber in our diet, or we might be getting too many environmental estrogens, like from paper and plastics. And also the way the liver actually metabolizes our estrogen has a huge effect as well. But one thing that we hear quite often is that I think I'm losing my mind. I feel like my body is divorcing myself. I've lost my ability to spell simple words. I keep losing my keys. I put them down and I just don't know where they are. Or I feel like I have early onset Alzheimer's. And that a lot of time has to do with whether or not our estrogen is balanced with our other hormones as well, but because of estrogen's direct effect on our brain. We want to make sure that we have enough estrogen throughout our lifetime to make sure that we have good blood flow to our brain, that neurotransmitters are firing the way they should be, and that we can make sure that we can keep away from falling into the throes of Alzheimer's and dementia. So when we take a look at estrogen and the cardiovascular protection of estrogen, here are some studies that were shown that if we start estrogen therapy early enough and we maintain that we can actually see better improvement in cardiovascular issues, and we could potentially delay the decrease of function. And this was presented not recently, but we're talking as early as 1998. A lot of these studies were starting to look at, and then we found even better studies in 2012. But again, that was still 10 years ago. When we look at specifically different areas of cardiovascular function, we show that estrogen can reduce heart failure, that we can reduce pre-existing heart issues. And these are two studies that were done recently to evaluate that and show positive results. Now, I find it interesting because a lot of times women form cataracts later in life. Now, I had cataract surgery, oh my gosh, it's been, I think I was 51 when I had cataract surgery done in both eyes. I had lenses replaced in both eyes, but that was directly due to a biological issue that developed very, very early on. In fact, I started developing some cataract issue when I was a very young child. So when we talk about cataracts being developed later in life, that's where a lot of times we see a hormonal correlation. And this was a study that was done in Korea in 2014. Now, we also know that if estrogens are kept in balance, again, with the other hormones, we can see that it could have a direct metabolic issue, specifically with diabetes. Now, there's a wide variety of issues going on with diabetes. So if you were diagnosed with diabetes as a teenager or as a younger child, that could have been due to an autoimmune issue or a viral impact where all of a sudden your pancreas stopped working very well and you needed to be put on insulin. But there's also a slower metabolic correlation to how hormones are balanced and how we develop diabetes later in life. And we can attribute that to a very specific type of bacteria that is in our gut or not in our gut that helps us to metabolize our glucose and then send signals to our pancreas as to what to do with that. Now, we do know that when we combine estrogen and other metabolic issues, we can help control diabetes. We specifically can correlate the lack of estrogen to accelerated aging. And this was a study done almost 20 years ago, but What we do know is that when we apply certain types of estrogen to the skin, we can actually see it kind of smooth out fine lines, and we get less furrowing and less wrinkling. But we also have a better luster to the overall outer layers of the skin. And that is something that if we balance hormones from the inside out, we have better control over that. Because aging isn't necessarily just a physical impact to the skin on the outside of our body, but this is also seeing accelerated aging of the actual cells throughout the body. And in this study, and this was done with a lot of women, I mean, we're talking about, between 18,000 to 91,000 postmenopausal women ages 50 to 59 who had had a hysterectomy and may have died prematurely because they did not take estrogen. And I think that that's really sad because the bottom line is we have a hormonal imbalance, and that's what's causing changes in our cycles and significant bleeding issues, to which we attribute the majority of surgical hysterectomy. Whether they leave ovaries or not, it still can be an incredible impact on the family structure. And so if we can help avoid that, I think that that would probably be best. Another study took a look at 27 published articles and showed a 28% reduction in mortality in menopausal women under the age of 60 who use hormone replacement therapy, and the participants also had improved quality of life. And this was a self-reported improvement quality of life based on what they had experienced the 10 years prior to that. And again, this isn't a new study. But isn't that what we all are looking for? We're looking for better health, better ways to live. And we want to be able to do that not only for ourselves, but for our family. And then also to help improve the lives of our sisters, of our friends, of our neighbors, and those that we work with. So this was a study that looked at women across the nation who had more issues than others. And they looked at women who not only had a surgical hysterectomy, but also had their ovaries removed, and what happened when they were not given enough estrogen versus those that were given too much. But the delivery of estrogen is also really, really important. For example, if you're given an oral estrogen, we have documents and a wide variety of studies that shows that those estrogens have to then go through the liver before they're distributed throughout the body. And that liver will actually change those estrogens, can improve some of the symptoms, but can actually tend to lead to other problems that are associated with more aging and development of dementia and Alzheimer's later in life. However, when we use things topically, or even those that are used in the vaginal vault, we tend to have less risk, specifically of deep vein thrombosis, a wide variety of liver issues, osteoporosis, and stroke. And this is a study that shows that. And this was a recent study. Now, when estrogen is given orally, we do see that it can increase triglycerides, it can increase blood pressure, it increases estrone. So estrone is one of the 3 estrogens in the body, and estrone is more significantly correlated to issues associated with cancers. But it will also increase the issues with blood clots and C-reactive protein, which increases inflammation. It also increases sex hormone binding globulin, which can then decrease the effectiveness of testosterone and other hormones. Now, when it disrupts the metabolism of tryptophan and consequently serotonin, that's where we see sleep disturbances and also depression, because most of our serotonin is actually made in our gut. So why use estrogen orally at all? Well, it's easy to use, right? But it isn't necessarily individualized. There is a single estradiol product brand name is Estrace, and it is available in 3 strengths, but it can be cut in half and it is generically available. And then what we've historically used is also other estrogens like Premarin, which is actually, those are hormones derived from horse urine, which that's where the name Premarin comes from, is pregnant mare urine. And then we also have other synthetic hormones, synthetic estrogens that we've used throughout the years, some with some success, others with not so much success. But what I will also say is that a lot of times when you're using an oral synthetic, it's harder to get off of them because of the liver metabolites. It can be done, absolutely. We just need to know about the other estrogens that you've been on so that we can kind of start off with a different ratio of estrogens and then slowly taper those off so that we can normalize a dose into more of a physiologic parameter. So keep it within a better narrow index so that we don't see the adverse events of using too much estrogen. Now, when we compound estrogen, we usually use a combination of estradiol and estriol, and we call that bi-est, bi meaning 2, est from estrogen. And then we're able to individualize your therapy because we're able to take a look at test results and find out exactly what you need and only what you need so that we're not replacing too much. Now, progesterone is another sex steroid hormone. And literally wherever there's an estrogen receptor, there's a progesterone receptor right next to it. And that is throughout every cell in your entire body. Progesterone is very safe. A natural progesterone is very similar to what is normally made in the body. What we compound with is bioidentical estrogens, and those estrogens are derived from plants, then synthetically changed so that it matches your chemical structure identically. So they're considered bioidentical. Progesterone functions through numerous routes in the body. Specifically, it's a great diuretic, it's anti-inflammatory, it stimulates ovulation, balances estrogen. It helps to potentiate GABA. So GABA is a hormone that's made in the brain that helps us keep us kind of even keeled and not so anxious and not so stressed. It enhances the action of thyroid hormone. It helps us build bone. It maintains pregnancy, but it really has a great positive feedback on sleep. It helps prevent anxiety, irritability, and mood swings, as well as metabolic rate. It increases scalp hair, and it converts estrone to estrone sulfate, which is then stored in the body. And it also helps to promote and modulate immunity in the body. It protects breast health. It helps to support the immune system. And it also helps to promote the outer sheath, the outer skin of nerves. So it does help to protect the nerves as well. Now, when we don't have enough progesterone, we see quite a few issues. We see an increase in stress. We see an increase in depression. So then we're diving into antidepressants. We also see that we kind of crave sugar more. And when we do eat sugar, it does lower our progesterone. When we eat saturated fats, like a lot of bacon or animal fats, then not necessarily the saturated fats that are available in nuts and avocado and things like that, or in salmon, but specifically those animals that we feed a lot of grains to, that becomes more of an issue. And when we don't have enough progesterone, it can also decrease our thyroid hormone. Synthetic progestins are not natural to the body, and they don't work on the same pathways as natural progesterone. Now, when we're given progestins, such as in birth control pills or Provera, or medroxyprogesterone acetate, whether that's in a tablet or in a patch, or even in a shot, so like Depo-Provera, it can increase our appetite, increase our weight, increase depression and headaches. It can cause breast tenderness. It can cause us to lose hair, and it stays in the body longer so that those issues kind of come back around and around and around. Progestins also can stimulate the spasm of coronary arteries, which can contribute to coronary artery disease and cardiovascular disease. What we knew as far back as the early 2000s with the Women's Health Initiative is that when we actually looked at the details of that study, we knew that oral estrogens and oral progestins increase the risk of breast cancer, which is significant. And I don't know why they're continuing to be used, especially when we have such great products that are available in natural forms that decrease all of this. And here's a couple of studies that show that. When we look at estrogen, whether it's estradiol or synthetic estrogens, and we add it to progestins, we not only see an increase of breast cancer incidence, but also an increase in mortality. In other words, people die more often. It increases cholesterol, decreases serotonin. And these are just some of the other issues. But when we use natural progesterone versus synthetic, we can actually see better balance of estrogen. We see better sleep. We are calmer. Our nerves are calmer. We see that we're not as depressed. We're not as inflamed. We can actually maintain better body weight. And we can see better cholesterol levels, triglyceride levels, and we see better overall immunity. There are several studies that show that progesterone does not induce or stimulate estrogen-causing breast cancer. And here's a bunch of references. So when you go in and you talk to your doctor about some of these issues, we can definitely, my mouse is going crazy. So when you go in and you talk to your doctor about options that you have available, and you want some of these references, let us know. However, if we don't use enough estrogen with progesterone, so if we're just using progesterone by itself because we've bought it over the counter, or we're just using a progesterone capsule by itself, we do see some significant changes, bloating. It can actually increase our stress hormone. It can increase our fat storage. So we want to make sure that we are looking at really good balance. That is so important, because we don't want to be bloated. We don't want to have an increase in appetite and cravings. We want to maintain a good balance and good health. So when we're talking about hormones, we can't leave out testosterone. Women have testosterone in their body. We make about 0.3 milligrams a day in our prime. So using more than that can be helpful in some situations for libido, but not always. So we do know that testosterone can increase sexual interest, but if you have a very stressful life going on, adding testosterone may or may not change that. We do know that testosterone helps with pain control. It also increases muscle mass and strength. So when we have someone who's been injured or has a debilitating issue, we can use a little bit of testosterone, even for a short period of time, to help with rebuilding that damaged or injured area. Now, when we don't have enough testosterone, we're exhausted. We literally feel like we haven't slept in days. So you know the second eyelid, the one that's up above, and some people's skin above their eye actually comes out and starts laying down on top of their eyelid and even into their eyelashes. That can be a sign of low testosterone. When our lips kind of turn in and our lower lip comes down and we just have this very thin line of an upper lip, a lot of times that's a lack of testosterone. And even dry eyes can be a lack of testosterone. We actually make prescriptions where it's applied directly to the eye, on the eyelid, not in the eye, but on the outside. And memory can be lacking, and definitely not as sharp. Now, what can cause low testosterone? Well, menopause, childbirth, chemotherapy, a wide variety of prescription medications, including birth control pills, physiologic trauma and depression, as well as some prescriptions that we use on a regular basis. So what do you do to manage your symptoms? Well, I think it's comical on my side of things, although I'm sure it's not comical on your side of things, that, oh, honey, it's just vaginal dryness. Here's a little bit of hormone, we'll make it better. Well, the one thing that I have found over the last 35 years is that taking something orally or slapping on a patch doesn't necessarily help improve vaginal dryness. And if we're not careful about maintaining good vaginal health, those walls can become very thin. The bladder can fall in the vaginal vault. The vaginal wall can literally tear or expand, kind of stretch out. Sometimes the bowel will fall in. The labia can shrink. The clitoris can shrink. And that in itself can cause a very difficult time to reach an orgasm. And we usually see commercial products such as estrace or estradiol being used, even Vagifem or the Fem Ring. And those products work very, very well for a lot of people, but not for everybody. So we make a lot of creams that have different bases or even suppositories that will actually stay in the vaginal vault longer. Because as we all know, whether we've used an estrogen cream or maybe an antifungal cream, maybe we've had a yeast infection, you put it in at nighttime because you want it to sit in there longer. So you're usually laying down so it can stick in there longer and it can be absorbed and do its work. But then we get up in the middle of the night, we go to the bathroom, or we get up in the morning and we go to the bathroom and bloop, there it is. And then we feel kind of messy and just kind of sticky for another day or two. Well, the other thing that I think is important that some people are not warned about is that when women use hormone creams in the vaginal vault and it stays in there, we have to be careful about being intimate. So if you have a male partner, we don't necessarily want to share our estrogen creams with them because we don't want their prostate to change. We certainly don't want to lead to any kind of cancers that are associated with high estrogen levels, including breast cancer in men. Now, for women who have had problems or situations that they've had precancerous issues, or they've actually been diagnosed with cancer, there are non-hormonal products that we compound that work very well to help rehydrate those tissues. And then there's an oral product that's available over the counter, and it's called Hyalife 2. And it's one of my most favorite products. Literally, I take 3 capsules every day. I actually take 2 in the morning and 1 at night, and it helps my dry eye, but it also helps to keep my skin supple. I have less aches and pains with that. And, just overall, I feel so much better. I definitely still have to drink a lot of water, which we should all do anyway, but it just kind of hydrates from the inside out. And again, that's called Hyalife 2. Let's see, there's 30 to 40 days supply runs about $100. So it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but it really does help. There are some great personal lubricants out there as well. I would be very careful to analyze what's actually in them. So make sure that we are not growing bacteria. We don't want to do that. Mood swings aren't all in your head. In fact, a lot of times it can be in your gut. What we find out is that mood swings can be a hormonal imbalance. They can be a thyroid issue. They can literally be a situation where you've got the wrong stuff growing in your gut. Too many of the bad guys, not enough of the good guys. Maybe you don't make enough happy hormone, which is called serotonin. All of this can be tested and evaluated so that we know exactly what to give back. But there's some great over-the-counter products, natural products like L-theanine, I love L-theanine. It's available in 100 milligram capsules. It's in a liquid. You can give it to children. You can give it to teenagers, adults, older people as well. And you don't really have to be too terribly concerned about the dose. It's very difficult to overdose that. Great stuff. Hot flashes and night sweats will go away in time. Okay, that's great. But in the meantime, life sucks. They are debilitating. What I hear over and over again, I literally had a lady the other day tell me that her night sweats were so terrible. She didn't feel sexy anymore. She felt dirty all the time. She just felt sluggish. She felt dumpy. She felt her marriage was suffering from it. She had no libido whatsoever. And she had actually thought about taking her own life. And I thought that is absolutely dramatic. So I literally stopped everything that I was doing. And she and I talked for a little while. I've just let her explain things and talk as long as she needed to. And what we were able to determine is that she needed to have some testing done. So let's get down to the root of the issue so that we can really help you and not just kind of like slap a Band-Aid on there and, oh, well, you mean you're in the same boat 6 to 8, maybe even 12 months later? No. Let's fix things now. Now it might take a little bit of time to get to your new happy place, but maybe it's as simple as drinking more water. Maybe we have to be careful about what you're eating in the evening or what you're eating or drinking during the day. Perhaps too much caffeine is causing this. There's a lot of different things that we could figure out. But libido is more than testosterone. And that desire to be intimate and close to someone is something, especially in the last couple of years, a lot of people have really suffered from. But there's compounded medications that can help with this. So literally oxytocin. So that's the hormone that's made in our brain that when we have a baby and they put that baby on our chest, that connection that we feel with the baby, that's a release of oxytocin. So Tasia is actually in this picture and she's showing you a nasal spray because that's exactly what we do is we make it in a nasal spray. And when we put the nozzle in our nose, we actually angle it to the outside so that the mist is taken up by the skin on the inside of the nose. Some people use it every day to help with mood and depression. And then you can continue to use it if you want to be intimate. If things are kind of ramping up, you can do a couple more sprays and that will help with orgasm as well. And that is lovely. And it gives you this sense of connection. It's wonderful stuff. We've been seeing it prescribed a lot for grief as well. Now, those tummy bulges, that is not necessarily just your diet. It could be stress eating. It could be alcohol. It could be just high cortisol levels and low thyroid levels. It could be a lot of different things that can happen. We do use low dose naltrexone in doses of anywhere from 4 to 48 milligrams. It's also in the product called Contrave, but there are also some other things that we can use to help reduce that rippling in our midsection. And it's not necessarily just here, take this pill and it will all go away. Sometimes it is navigating peaceful time, finding time to pray, finding time to meditate and be still within yourself, even if it's only for 5 minutes, once or twice a day. That makes all the difference in the world. Because some people say, you know, I exercise and all of this doesn't come off. And you're right. It's because your stressor hormone's too high and your thyroid is being affected from that. And it's difficult to pull that weight off. So this is a picture of a lady from early 1934, but what you see is that she's kind of full in her cheeks and she's kind of full around her eyes and the outer third of her brow is missing. And she's got a fullness in her neck and her hair looks like it's rather thin and lacks a lot of luster. Well, you don't have to put up with that. That doesn't have to be a lifelong issue. It's not necessarily a part of aging. But because the thyroid is the master metabolic gland, it literally controls every metabolic process in your body. When we test, we need to look at not just the hormone that's released in the brain to stimulate the thyroid, but then what exactly is the thyroid doing? Is it making enough hormone? And then is that hormone actually producing active hormone? Because the levothyroxine that's released from your thyroid gland isn't active. It has to be converted to active thyroid at the cellular level. So there's a lot of supplements that are available that are prescription, which is active hormone that is prescribed. But you can also use a little zinc, a little chromium, some vitamin D, and sometimes your iron needs to be balanced in order for your thyroid to work really well. Thyroid panel is always looked at in blood or blood spot. We don't look at it in urine or in saliva. It's too large a molecule. Okay. I literally had a lady earlier today tell me that she has no stress in her life. And I thought, my gosh, do you live at the top of a mountain and there's nobody else around you? Are you perfectly content? I said, I wanted to know what her secret was. And then she told me about all of these other things. And it sounded an awful like a fairly stressful life to me, but she had just assumed that this is what her life was. And she didn't feel any stress, even though she literally wore like 6 or 7 hats throughout the day. You know, she worked full time. She had kids at home. She had a household to take care of. You know, she had the shopping to do. She coordinated people's doctor's visits. She had animals to take care of. And that's a lot of stress. So it may be just your average day life, but it still can be stressful. And stress can directly impact a wide variety of areas. Some people actually feel a hoarseness or a thickening in their neck, and that's because their stress is so high, it's suppressing their thyroid. And anytime we're stressed can disturb our sleep to the point where we have night sweats. So they're not necessarily just estrogen. We can look at stressor hormone as well. Stress is the #1 killer of all United States people. And, you know, let's face it, the last 2 years have been a very trying time. We've never experienced a pandemic before, and we're all exhausted. We're just tired of all this stuff. We just like it to all go away. Can't Rona just, take a hike and move on down the road and we'll never see her again. Well, a lot of times people are coming in and they're like, I've got this COVID-19, as in 19 pounds I'm trying to shed. And a lot of it has to do with stress. However, there are ways to navigate that are in your control. So let's talk a little bit about that as well. So let's talk about testing, because a lot of times when you take a laundry list of symptoms to your provider, there might be a little bit of a blood test done, but it may not show enough to really get to your root issues to then provide you with good concrete solutions that you can choose from and make choices for yourself. Because let's face it, everybody has a budget, everybody has goals, and we need to work within those parameters. Not my goals, not my budget, but really what's going on with you. Here are some testing options, and we'll spend a little bit of time going through these. So one of the first things that I really, really think is cool is genetic testing. And you only have to do it once. And it's put out by 3x4 Genetics. There is a practitioner in Green Bank. Her name is Toni Marthaler. And if you forget who she is, you can give me a call at the store tomorrow and I'll let you know who that is. She's in Green Bank, and you do not have to drive out there. You can simply set up an appointment with her and she will talk to you over Zoom or her portal anyway. It looks at 36 core elements. And within those elements, you learn how well you metabolize caffeine and salt. What types of exercise are best for you? It takes a look at how healthy your brain is, how healthy your organs are, how healthy are your bones, and certainly what is going on metabolically. Is your body inflamed? Are your hormones balanced? It looks at even ways of looking specifically at your genes as to whether or not you absorb B vitamins well enough, or should you be looking at methylated forms of B vitamins to make sure that they're active. So when you do take them in your body, you can do something with them. It even looks at genetic parameters as to whether or not certain prescription medications are your best choices. So it works not just in evaluating what's going on with you now, but certainly if you are given prescriptions, you can look back at your tests and say, that one's not going to work very well for me. And perhaps that could literally be the difference between a life and death type of choice. So for example, myself, when I did this, I found out that I do not metabolize because of genetic issues. I don't metabolize medications like statins. If I took them in to my body to help lower cholesterol, they would actually be more of a detriment because I would break down muscle faster than they would, and they wouldn't actually work for me. I also learned that if ever I need a medication to help thin my blood, that I'm going to have to be very, very careful about which ones are chosen for me, or that I can have an impact in choosing those for myself, because I don't metabolize a lot of them. And so therefore they won't work. And that could be very, very dangerous. So I need to be careful about those things. So I think the 3x4 genetics is very helpful. There are other genetic tests that can be done to help evaluate whether or not, where in the process of forming hair is that being interrupted for you? And then we can tailor medications specifically to stop either in the early phase, the mid phase, or the later phase, so that you can continue to grow hair and not have significant hair loss. And again, these are both simple cheek swabs, and then the results come back in a few weeks, and they're not terribly expensive. The 3x4 genetics, along with the counseling that goes with it, is about $500. The hair loss test runs around $300. So they're not horrible, but again, they're once in a lifetime kind of things. When we look at thyroid, we need to look at a complete panel. So not just a TSH, but a free T4, a free T3. TPO is one of the two antibodies that we should look at occasionally, because antibodies can change with aging. And antibodies can increase even if you have bad guys growing in your gut. TGB is another antibody, and reverse T3 is the last parameter that we look at in thyroid that shows us how much our stressor hormone is impacting our thyroid status. So if we look at all of this, then we have many clues so that we can fit those puzzle pieces exactly where we need them. Vitamin D3 is something that we need to look at, I believe, at least once a year. My most favorite times to test are usually September, October, but also in March, because, we've come out of these dark gray months, not a lot of sunshine. We're not outside hardly at all because it's wet, it's gross, it's snowing. It's just not fun to be outside right now. It's cold. Well, a lot of times our vitamin D level can be really low. And if it's not optimal, 60, 70, for example, even if it's 38, it's still in the normal range, but that's at the bottom of the scale. So why are we waiting until it's too low to actually supplement that? So we want to make sure that that gauge is at least, halfway normal. In other words, half a tank, or even 3/4 of a tank, so that it is going to do us better than good, or more good than harm. Vitamin D is really a hormone. It helps us to modulate our immune system. It helps to reduce inflammation in our body. And it also helps to make sure that we're navigating our minerals and vitamins appropriately. So we want to make sure that it's nice and high. Now, I also like to test in September and/or October, because if it's not optimal and you're not supplementing enough with enough vitamin D, then you will just reduce that through those fall and winter months, and then vitamin D won't be optimal. And that's why we have a flu and cold season come January, February, and March. And that's because our vitamin D drops off, our immunity drops off, and we're more susceptible to illness. And then when we take a look at hormones, saliva testing is really how much hormone is in the cell at that particular time. So the saliva is a passive migration of hormone that just kind of collects in the saliva pool. And it represents a little bit more closely than the other ways of testing. It represents really what's going on in the cell, because you can't just pull cells and then evaluate them. We can look at hormones in urine, and that's very helpful to show us what we're actually doing with our hormones. What is our liver doing? How is it metabolizing our hormones? Because some metabolites are helpful and other metabolites are not so helpful, potentially dangerous. Now, when we look at hormones in blood, that's really tricky because our blood is primarily water and our hormones are oils. And we all know what happens when we cook with oil and water, or if we put oil and water in the same glass or cup, the oil sits on the top, right? And so our hormones are then snatched up by these carrier molecules to be taken off to the target tissues where they actually do their activity. So evaluating hormones in blood can be very tricky. Our hormones usually spike or peak early in the morning around 7, 8 o'clock. So if you get a requisition from your doctor to evaluate your hormones and you stop by the lab on your way home from work, they're not going to show proper levels because they're very, very low and later in the day. They're supposed to be. You're supposed to be winding down to get ready to go to sleep. However, if you go first thing in the morning, you're going to be much more able to see exactly what's going on, and you're going to have a better test. And that works the same way for thyroid. If you currently take thyroid hormone, you always want to have your thyroid testing done 4 hours after your last dose. Very important, very important. Otherwise, the test result isn't going to be as accurate as it could be. So when we look at hormones, we can look at hormones in saliva, we can look at them in urine, we can look at neurotransmitters, we can look at thyroid in blood, a wide variety of issues. But when we're testing cortisol, we usually look at that in saliva. So we get 4 little tubes, a bigger one for the morning, another small one for noon, another small one for evening, dinner time, and another one for bedtime. And that gives us a really nice graph to work off of. But in a basic hormone panel, we look at estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, and at least a morning and a bedtime sampling of cortisol to really see what's going on. And then we can further evaluate exactly how much medication you might need. And we help support physicians in that as well. So it's not uncommon that doctors will say, I don't know as much as I'd like to about hormone status and how to correct that. So I'm going to send you over to Michelle at Makers Compounding Pharmacy, and she's going to help you with some of that testing. So this is what you can do even tomorrow. You can spend 10 minutes outside barefoot with your abdomen showing and kind of point that up toward the sun if you can. However, that's not easy to do at this time of year because the sun's just not out so much. In fact, I was looking at the forecast and it said we might even get some of that white stuff toward the beginning of the week. I don't know about this, but the temperatures are supposed to be dropping down below 30. So we're not quite out of winter yet. Maybe that little vermin actually knew what he was talking about. I don't know. So what you can also do is drink enough water. So if you drink in ounces, half your body weight every day, that will help. So in other words, if you weigh 150 pounds, drink 75 ounces of water a day, and that will help maintain good hydration. Make sure that if you want to decrease white fat accumulation, that we move just a little bit. You don't have to train for a marathon, but move. And that 3x4 genetics test can actually show you, are you better fit for high intensity workouts, or should you be leaning more toward yoga? That's very important because we don't want to hurt you either. We don't want to stress out your muscles and your ligaments. Go outside and put your bare feet on the ground and ground for about 10 minutes every day. That is very helpful. Sitting and being in yourself, relaxed and breathing not shallow, but deep and rhythmic is very helpful. It helps to bring out a happier mood, but it also helps to balance your hormones and lower your stress. Breathe in for 7 seconds, hold for 1 or 2, and slowly exhale for another 7 seconds. And that is very helpful. You can also evaluate in testing exactly what's growing in your gut. This is called Biomfx. It's a gut test. It is a stool test. It comes fully equipped with everything you need to collect a stool sample and send it off to the lab. And with this, we can literally change burping, digestion, how well you metabolize foods. Maybe some foods that you're really sensitive to can be changed. Perhaps we can make an impact on your irritable bowel or your small intestinal bowel overgrowth. We can even change Crohn's, which is an autoimmune disease, or ulcerative colitis, by knowing what's in there and then working toward building the good guys up and eliminating the bad guys. We can have a dramatic impact on diabetes and your blood sugar levels as well. Specifically mood, I kid you not, we can make your mood nice and bright within 30 days. It's really important to do this. So the gut testing runs about $400, and those are tests that are available at the pharmacy anytime. Now, once you do the test, and let's say there's, some bad guys we need to get rid of and some good guys we need to put back, this is a 3-month restoration where there's 3 months of the Megaspore probiotic, which is a spore technology that does survive digestion. And then in month 2, we add the prebiotic. And so you would take the Megaspore for months 1, 2, and 3, the prebiotic months 2 and 3, and then the Mega Mucosa month 3 only. And you can get that in capsules or in powder. And this is some of the information about that. And we do want to make sure that it's washed down with a good 16 ounces of water in the morning to make sure that there's significant hydration there so that we don't cause bloating, cramping, and diarrhea. This is very successful, and I've literally seen people change their bloating. Many people have talked about losing weight. Their cholesterol has changed, their triglycerides have changed. Some people feel that their hormones are in better balance and they just feel brighter. They're sleeping better. They have better ability to capture their words and put a sentence together. But what's very helpful is that they just feel like they're normal, and they're finding that that's a really good thing. Oh, I mentioned Hyalife too. So this is Hyalife 2. They are kind of a yellowish orangish capsule. And it's a hyaluronic acid, and it works great as a moisturizer at the cellular level. You literally moisturize from inside out. So it helps to decrease inflammation in the bones and joint. It also helps with dry eyes, dry skin, and it literally helps within a few weeks. It's actually made by a pharmacist friend of mine in a compounding pharmacy elsewhere in the United States. So when we get all your tests back, and you might need a little bit of prescription medication, what can you do? Well, there are some commercial available medications that your provider can write prescriptions for, and you can get at a regular pharmacy. But many times that helps about 20-25% of the population. Maybe you need something that's more fine-tuned to what is best for you. And we can do that in a variety of ways. When we get the test back, we can formulate something that is specific to you. So those cute little squares, those are called troches, and those are can be divided and put underneath the tongue so that the medication can be absorbed by the blood vessels in the mucosa in the mouth. We can also put them in creams. We can put them in drops instead of a troche. Some medications, specifically progesterone, we put into a capsule because that oral progesterone can help us sleep. Those metabolites that are produced by the liver sometimes can help us to be calmer and sleep better. Testosterone, we always use in a cream, a troche, or a drop. Oral testosterone has been shown to cause liver cancer, so we want to stay away from that. So we just use other forms. And then oxytocin is usually used in a nasal spray for depression and for grief, and also for better bonding with your spouse, so for orgasms, but we can also use it to help hydrate the vaginal vault. Estrogens are great for doing that as well. So when we look at vaginal treatments, these are called pearls, and they're little tiny discs, and they do so well. I had a gynecologist call me, and she says, you know, I need something different other than Vagifem. She says, my ladies are telling me Vagifem is hundreds of dollars a month. And when you're on a fixed income, that can be staggering, because she said that Medicare is not covering vaginal products. So if you've got vaginal dryness, or atrophic vaginitis is what it's generally called, she says, what do we do? What can we help with that isn't going to break the bank? So we make small pearls like this. We also make small suppositories. We have mucosal binding gels and creams called Alage or Mucilox. And a lot of these are hypoallergenic. They're not messy. They don't produce a lot of stickiness. And there's less, when it's in a small volume, there's less opportunity for a partner to become exposed as well. And they're not expensive. We're talking about a 1 to 2 month supply, sometimes even longer, could be anywhere from about $55 to $65. It's certainly not hundreds of dollars that I'm being told is what people are being charged. That's ouch. That's ouch. There are some herbals that are available over the counter, even some natural hormone that's over the counter that you can use. But I would caution to make sure that you're doing some testing first to make sure that this is what's best for you. Anytime that we're using something like diindole methane or DIM with indole 3-carbinol, which helps to decrease estrogen excess, you certainly don't want to go from excess to deficiency. So we got to make sure what's right for you. So you talk to your professionals, your medical providers about that, and help us pick what is going to fit your budget, but it's going to be the best quality that you can possibly afford. Now let's spend a minute talking about low-dose naltrexone. And the reason why I bring this up is because many times when we associate symptoms with menopause or hormonal imbalance, there's other things going on. So a lot of times we have a low functioning thyroid. Perhaps we've been diagnosed with Hashimoto thyroiditis or Graves' disease, or we've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, multiple sclerosis, or digestive issues like Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. We can use a very inexpensive, low dose, low side effect, and low drug interaction product called low-dose naltrexone. It helps to modulate the immune system. It blocks pain receptors. It reduces those chemicals produced in the body that cause inflammation. It helps to normalize thyroid function. It supports hormone function. And there's over 900 scientific case studies, as well as scientific papers written on low-dose naltrexone. And many of them have been written in the last 3 years, which I think is fascinating. So like I said, it is low dose, low side effect, and it helps a wide variety of issues. So it's worth a shot. But again, come talk to us and we're happy to help you with that. There's a lot of physicians that are not very well informed with low-dose naltrexone and its application in several disease states. So again, we can help provide information to those providers or to you that you can help talk to your doctor about or your provider about. So if you need help, come see us. We're not asking you to change your doctor. By all means, you have spent a long time getting to know your physician, your medical provider, and that is the first and foremost relationship that we want you to maintain. But it's important to test, because when you know, you have knowledge, you have power of what you can do next, what you can do to help eliminate some of these symptoms that are very much bothering you so that you can get to the root of the issue and not have to come back and see me in 6 months and see if they're still there, or your labs are fine, so we'll see you later. We don't have to put up with any of that. But perhaps we can help you fine-tune your diet, to help fine-tune your supplements so that you can feel your absolute best today, tomorrow, and the day after that. I will let you know that the FDA is definitely trying to decrease your access to compounded medications, specifically hormones. There was a NASM study that the FDA actually paid to have put together. In fact, they not only paid for it, they solicited public money for that NASM study to take place. And then the FDA actually told the individuals who were conducting that study exactly how they wanted the outcome to read. And I kid you not, I'm not making this up one bit. There were over 100 people that were experts in the areas of not only compounded hormones, but providers that have been prescribing hormones for over 20 years, including Dr. Pam Smith. A wide variety of expert compounders that have been compounding for over 30 years that were solicited as expert testimony, and not one single word, not one single sentence of any of these individuals who provided expert testimony were considered in the outcome of this NASM study. So your rights are right now at risk of being taken away. So I urge you to contact your congresswomen, your U.S. House reps, and let them know. So your two senators are Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell. Your U.S. reps in this area are either Rick Larson or Susan Delbene, and let them know how the impact or the restriction of compounded medications will dramatically affect your life today. You can go to compounding.com and you can share your story. You can let them know how compounded medications have significantly improved your life and how that will impact you if that is taken away from you. So if you need more specific information, you can contact the pharmacy. We can get that information to you. You can also pick up these flyers at the store. But again, there's a new website and it's compounding.com as to where you can leave that information. And this is some information about that. Hallmark is available. We just put up some really cool stuff with Easter's and Mother's Day, and the store is so cute. And we're in the middle of a major remodel, so we're going to move some of our structures around. Sorry, my dog all of a sudden has decided she wants some attention. We have one-on-one personal health consultations available. We just need to set up an appointment for that. The testing is available at any time. And if ever you need a consultation to go over your vitamins and supplements, we can schedule that as well. And we also make pet medications. So we can help you flavor and find the dose that's just right for your pet. You can contact me through our Facebook page, our Instagram, our LinkedIn. We have a couple of websites. We have makerscompounding.com as well as the LDN Pharmacist. And I'm happy to help you in any way, shape, or form that I can, whether it's talking to you directly or helping your providers with the information that they might need. So our next webinar is on March 17th at 6 p.m. And we're going to talk about issues surrounding multiple sclerosis and how to get to the root of the issue and how low-dose naltrexone can help with that. You can text webinar to our phone number, or you can simply register on our website as well. And then the webinar after that is specifically looking at inflammation throughout the body and chronic pain and how to reduce that. So again, I thank you very much for visiting with us tonight. And if there's any questions, you can pop those in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute yourself, you're welcome to do that as well.